Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Darcey, and I'm an author, a fertility coach, and an advocate for women's health. And I'm excited to introduce my co-presenter.
Hi, everyone. I am Janene Oleaga. I am a family formation attorney and a reproductive rights advocate. I started my practice to assist LGBTQ individuals and anyone navigating infertility with all matters relating to surrogacy, gamete donation, embryo donation, and adoption, including confirmatory adoption and step parent adoption. I am lucky enough to have found Resolve New England through my advocacy work, and I'm excited to be here today with Kristen. So thank you very much.
I'm excited to be here with you because when we were doing our prep for this conversation, which is about what can you do or what are your options for your embryos, even before we got on together, I was telling you how this is so triggering emotionally. So I think together we bring such a nice balance to the left brain and the right brain about how you can, if you're in the process of beginning or in the middle or at the end of the process, what do you do with your embryos? And I was a patient. I've been there. I've done that. And to be honest with you, my oldest son is 25, and I've watched the changes in the fertility industry now. I call it an industry. But way back when, Resolve New England was the saving grace. That was the light in this really dark place. And I remember feeling so isolated and so alone, and especially when you are in a transition period. So this question that we're really talking about is, what are your options when you are starting the process? Because what I found for myself and for my clients is that you really don't know what questions to ask. And then when you're asked these questions, okay, after this end of this IVF cycle, or when you finish, the whole creation process, what do you do with these embryos? And I know that you bring in such a wealth of information about the legal point. I off the top of my head, there are certain things you can donate to another couple. You can donate to science for research. You can, and this one hits me hard emotionally, thaw and destroy. And when I was within that conversation way back when with my reproductive endocrinologist, my follow-up question to that option was, well, what happens? And when he told me, well, it's medical waste, that was just too much, almost like the fire hose. You get this information, you feel like you're being hit with the water from a fire hose. And the last one, there's two more. The last one would be a compassionate transfer, which is during the point of a woman's cycle that you transfer with, knowing that you're not able to conceive or bring a pregnancy to, not conceive, but bring a pregnancy to term. The embryos are transferred back. Or the last one is really do nothing. And I'm curious, what do you find when people come to you? I know we talked about it, and most of the time, I'm so honored to have the privilege of walking, this road and journey to decision making when people are really in crisis.
Yeah, no one starts IVF thinking that they're going to have the problem that there's too many embryos, right? The more embryos that you get that are viable, the better chances, right? So
Right.
when you're filling out those clinic forms really early on in your journey, sometimes they do say, what would you like to happen to your embryos? And it's a good time to ask that question to at least put it on the patient's radar, but you have no idea how you're going to feel after you have a child or more than one child and you still have remaining embryos. Everyone's story is different and everyone has different feelings around it. There's no right or wrong. It's a very, very personal and intimate decision. So
I
I
agree
think,
so much. Oh, sorry to cut you off, but I
no, it's
agree.
okay.
And that the decision process, it's okay to change your mind about
Yes,
what your choices are over the milestones in your journey. And I think that that was such an important thing that you just said, because depending where you are, if you're starting, you don't, your fear, and unless for me and also for my clients, was, will I have enough embryos?
Right.
Will they make it to being able to be transferred? So it's a really emotionally charged decision making, point on this journey.
Absolutely. And I think it's, as you said, people change their minds. I've heard clinics recommend people wait approximately 3 years. There's no hard and fast rule, but I usually discourage people from making decisions like when they're pregnant or newly postpartum. You just don't know how you're going to feel. The other side of that coin is I've had people that have had embryos in storage for 12 years and they're confident that their family building is complete, but they really don't know what to do.
No, and I think for, if we talk about the emotional part about it, this this is such a tender point, because, it seems for me, for myself and also for the people that I work with, that it also is a healing opportunity, that it comes around the grief, the sadness, maybe the regret, or, whatever the emotion that might be needing to have a light shined on it. When this question comes around, you know, it it's okay. It's okay. And if you're sitting there stuck, thinking of those choices that and please jump in if I forgot one. I just wrote those down because those are the ones I normally talk about in coaching. But oh, I forgot where I was going. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like, okay, I want to make a decision with this for closure, because there's a lot of people that are just like, okay, I just need to close this chapter out, but I don't know, I can't get to that yet. I have a download that Kate and everyone will make available, which is really these 6 questions to help you flush out. Because I know for me, I usually start with what I don't want,
Yeah.
because sometimes if we don't know what we want, it's okay to know what you don't want. And that's like a little springboard to help you narrow it down to what you will feel comfortable doing. So, one of the questions you can start with is, what don't I want? Or what will I tolerate? What will I not tolerate and what will I tolerate? And so that kind of, you know, dwindled down the options a little bit. And the other thing I was hoping that you could talk about is, have you had a situation where there was um, uh, need for greater compromise between two parties, if there's two parties involved? And
Right.
I know I'm kind of jumping ahead of what we were, going to talk about, but I wanted to bring that in too, because if you're partnered, you're not only dealing with how you feel about this, and you're honoring how your partner feels about that, and how do you overlap and come to, a conclusion, or a strategy, or a plan.
I always send couples that are typically when I first meet with couples, they want to talk about all their options, right? They want to talk about their options legally, they want to talk about their options emotionally. And I always refer them to a professional like yourself that's able to kind of tease out the emotional component of any decision that they make. I need the consent of both parties in order to move forward in any direction. And a clinic will tell you the same thing, whether it comes to discard any sort of embryo transfer, even a compassionate transfer. A
Yes.
clinic is going to want the consent of both parties that are responsible for the embryo. Sometimes those parties have it is their gametes, and sometimes it's not. I have definitely seen a trend recently where couples who have created embryos with the assistance of a gamete donor, an egg donor, or a sperm donor are more willing to donate their embryos to another couple for reproductive purposes. And I think it's because they've realized what a gift they've gotten from that gamete donor that they're so willing to give that gift to somebody else. So it's interesting, but that's a common trend that I've been seeing definitely lately.
You know what, that I've been working with women and couples going through the process of creating their family now for a long time. And what I'm always so overwhelmed with is, oh, I get teary, but is the generosity of spirit and compassion that, Kate and I talk about it. And I think it was Kate who said, like, your fertility experience is like the color of your eyes.
Yeah.
Like that is who you are and becomes part of you. And the fact that it just makes me want to cry, that the fact that if you walk in your shoes of trying to create your family and then have that generosity of, spirit, to know that there's a longing for a couple or a mother or a father to have a child, that's just goodness. It's just plain
Yeah.
goodness.
And intended parents come to look into embryo donation all sorts of ways, but typically it is the last stop in their fertility journey. So they may have tried reproductive treatments or not. Maybe they knew that it was unattainable, for whatever reason, medically, financially. I've worked with intended parents who pursued adoption and had a failed adoption. So typically it is there's so much hope and there's so much heartbreak that this is truly a special gift. So I think intended parents through embryo donation are special in that way.
I agree. And I hope, if you're listening to this, you can feel the energy of that, the collective, because I know this journey is so isolating and heartbreaking and sad and debilitating. And there is so much support, like what you provide and what I do, and what, of course, what Resolve does. There's so much support. And the wish I had when I was going through my decision making process was really to reach out quicker,
Yeah.
to build that team of people who are a match and who have the specialties that you need to create your family. So
And I think people are hesitant typically to reach out to lawyers, but not in this field. They shouldn't be. If especially in assisted reproduction, it is reach out to a lawyer, even for guidance, even at your early stages. You can use input always.
I think that is so important. Like, I'm going to have to star an asterisk that with everybody I speak with, because when you're starting out or in the middle or at the end, for me and for my clients, you're just so focused that you need that team. You need someone like you that can look down and have the broader view of um, well-being, overall wholeness and well-being. So when can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
I know that you mentioned that the majority, or the increase of donation to other couples. I find that very interesting, because because I think it's where our lane is. Because my increase has been really just, maybe it's the long term of the journey of my clients, but just really the compassionate transfer. So that's very interesting, and I wonder
Do a
if,
lot of people choose compassionate transfer? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
oh
Chris.
no, the last few have.
Okay.
The last few have really waddled, like those were the options at the end. They're still in storage, but
Sure.
they were leaning towards, still in storage, but leaning towards, maybe trying one more time, or the transfer. So
That's
I
really
find that
interesting. Yeah.
I find that very wonderful, actually, because it's just coming to an end in a softer way for everybody, because this can be very brutal, financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It
Yeah.
can be a brutal way. But I think through our conversation, it's I hope we're showing that there is a softer side to this. to, get that support and that help that you need.
Agreed. Do a lot of people, when they meet with you, explore donating to science, or are they always, when you talk about donating, typically it's donating to scientific research or it's donating to another couple or individual for reproductive purposes? Do they ever bring that up as an option? Are they ever curious? I'm just asking for my own interest.
I think maybe, and maybe, it would be good to get another data point. But for me, I think it's because we talked about this in our prep. But basically, when my clients come to me, it's that dark night.
Yeah.
It's really the crisis point. So maybe it's not that they're opposing that. It's just that they're not able to, um, future think,
Yeah.
because they're still deep down in the, I don't want to say trenches, but deep down in treatment. So I was maybe it shifts depending on where you are. Like, if, like you said, the clinics say wait a few years or months before you make a decision. So
Do
I think that is important to say, like, you know it's important to find a way to recover and regulate your emotions,
yes.
because we don't want the wound making the decision.
Yes, it is like you said, it is a logical and emotional decision, and it needs to be. There's no shortcut. It has to truly be both. Anyone that's been through fertility treatment knows how valuable an embryo is. So to get to that point, you need to put everything you have into making a decision surrounding that embryo. Namely, and especially if you choose to donate your embryos to another couple or individual for reproduction. Do you, when you counsel, do you see both people considering embryo donation and also recipient parents, or is most of your counseling via the infertility, so it's mostly people who would be the donors?
It would be donors. It would be someone who is making the decision. I've had that. I've helped people come to that decision, or walked with them when they made that decision, which for me is selfless. It's just a selfless act, as just as adoption. It's a selfless act as a potential mom to donate, so that someone else can experience pregnancy. When I started my fertility journey, I was so, I'm going to say, hell bent, on carrying a pregnancy, until years down the road that I was like, no, let's just regroup here. It was for me to be a mom. And then, coming to that conclusion of, if the child comes through me or to me, it won't matter. But I think that's why I'm so cautious, allow people to come to that point, because it is a unique journey to decide for yourself, how do you want motherhood to look for you, or how do you want fatherhood to look for you? So
What are some, when people, sorry, I keep asking you questions. I'm just curious.
okay. I love it.
I get to see most people when they first come to me and ask, what are my options for my embryos? Can you read my clinic forms? Can you draft an embryo donation agreement? But when people are coming to you and they're considering embryo donation to another couple or individual, what are some questions or what are some topics that you encourage them to address and talk about? Because I come at it from a totally different angle, right? Thinking about the legalities and what they should think about legally, but I am likely missing something that should be addressed emotionally.
Well, I think when that is the strongest decision that they're leaning for, for me, it's really the selflessness of it. That without saying names or anything, I had a woman who was going through cancer and trying to become a mom and holding off everything that she needed to do for her, cancer treatment so that they could have a child. And she's like, well, I really would love to donate, but I'm concerned because of her situation. And it was very hard, heartfelt that if she could provide for another woman who had breast cancer, who was young and wanted to have a child. So that was part of, one of my clients that I worked with her about that. But it was very shocking to me. Well, not shocking, but it was very amazing to me that here she was, like, if you listen to what I just said, she was diagnosed with cancer. They were, managing that so she could be physically have a child, and then she was going to go through cancer treatment. But during that course, if she had embryos, she wanted to donate them, and was wondering, she was looking into the medical condition of the embryos to see if she could. But the selflessness
Yeah.
of
The
of
ability to think about other people in a
people,
situation like that is incredible.
isn't it? It's so, I think, it's every journey of a person trying to create their family outside their bedroom is is so personal and private, even though it is outside the bedroom.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I'm like, we don't grow up thinking, okay, when you have to go to the reproductive endocrinologist to have
Yeah.
a child, what are you going to do if you're one of the lucky people that have embryos left over?
Right.
What do you need to do? That's not a conversation. Well, I have it with my children. They think I'm a little looky, but that's not a conversation we have.
It's a problem that fertility patients hope to have at the start of their journey, right? They hope that they have extra embryos. That's like they haven't fully thought through what that means, but if you're undergoing fertility treatments, finding out that you have a large number of embryos is really all you can hope for at that point. So I understand that people, as science improves, as we know more, I understand that people are going to be increasingly more commonly in the situation where they have a number of remaining healthy embryos, but their family building is complete. Or maybe their fertility journey is complete. I've
Right.
certainly spoken with people who have been through a lot, and maybe started a journey with a partner and didn't end with a partner in some occasions. And it doesn't mean that they've necessarily had a child, but their fertility journey is over. But they have healthy embryos. So again, the ability to think about other people and donating embryos that are otherwise healthy to another couple or individual is truly incredible. This work, I'm sure you feel the same. I get to meet the best people, and they're the best people at their worst moments.
I
So
know. Isn't it? It's so profound, the goodness in people and the willingness to help others. The willingness to turn around and give a hand, and pull someone up. And the strength, and I don't want to dismiss men, but the strength of women is just awestruck. I can be awestruck in some of the cases. So can I ask you a question? What is the if if we're wrapping up, what is the most important thing, that you would say to a client or a new prospective client? Like, what is the most important, not overall or legal, like what would you tell
can
someone?
I give you a longer answer than you
Sure.
probably are asking
Did
for?
I
Okay.
just so put you on the spot?
No, I'm happy for it, because this is the most common when people come to me, when couples come to me and say, we have these embryos, we know we want to donate them to another couple. We know we want, or another individual. We know we want someone else to have the opportunity to have children. We love our children, our family is done. I always encourage them to think about the relationship that they want with the intended parents, right? Do they want to be very close? Do they want to remain at semi-anonymous? Full anonymity in 2023 is a fallacy and going forward. So how intimately do they want to be involved with the recipients of their embryos? And do they want their children and any resulting child, do they want to be able to foster a relationship while everyone is young? I think the answer to that question, or wherever the couple lands on the spectrum of full anonymity to best friends, right? That's going to dictate a lot of, okay, now how will I find the recipient parents? Will I find them through my clinic, which means that they probably live within the region? Will I
Right.
find them using a matching program with specific criteria that are important to me, right? They could be anywhere in the country. Do I want to find them through a church if that's important to me? Do I want to find them through Facebook? I've seen many successful embryo donation arrangements through social media with that are successful and good intentions. So I think the answer to that question alone drives a lot of the terms of the agreement, and how they're going to find people who will be the recipients of their embryos.
I love that because you know what, when I was listening to you, it just dawned on me that maybe, and maybe people don't realize the extent of this option, not only for donation, but also for creation. If you're listening to this and you're starting out and you don't, there, this is an option. This probably is a bigger option now than it was, a few years ago. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have one special embryo donation in mind between friends that had gone through fertility treatments together, and one very successfully and one not so successfully. And at the end of the first friend's family building, they had a number of embryos that she donated to her friend who never got successful and never got viable embryos. Um, and they knew they were going to be intimately involved, they're friends, and they knew their children were going to be. So their contract and agreement looks very different than an agreement between people who don't know each other and don't are open to knowing each other, but don't want to share identities at the outset of the journey, maybe in the future, which is okay too. There's no right or wrong. And being willing to donate your embryos to another couple or individual, you get to make those decisions. You get to kind of drive, where and to whom you would like to donate your embryos.
I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate you sharing that because it just feels so hopeful. And when you're in this and feeling hopeless, there is options, I promise. Like there's a beginning, middle, and an end, and maybe it's not the way you had envisioned or hoped or dreamed of, but the arc, bell curve, there is an end to this. And there's a lot of helpers along the way if you ask for help. And I so appreciate your wisdom and knowledge.
Kristen, the same here. I am happy to always refer people to you because I know they're going to be well taken care of, and they do need to explore the emotions that are involved with embryo donation. If it is from their genetic material, it's going to be a full genetic sibling to your children. So you have to give that some weight.
Yeah, that's where your expertise comes in, so needed. So how would someone I how does that work? Does the clinics refer to you too, or
Yeah, it
I'm
depends.
just curious?
Yeah, people find me in all sorts of ways. It's so interesting, and I always ask, like, how did you find me? And it's always different and unique. But I think if I am the first phone call or the second phone call at the start of the embryo donation journey, I typically start with that question, what type of relationship do you want to have with the intended parents? What type of relationship do you want your children to have with any child resulting from your embryos? And then from there, once they match with intended parents, we kind of work from there, right? What laws do we need to make sure we follow? What states is this going to occur in? What state law will apply? Sometimes people have said they want to donate their embryos, but they don't want any involvement. So they donate to an organization instead,
Right,
right? And that
right.
organization will do the matching and the placing of the embryos. So there's no wrong answer. It's just whatever is best suited to the individuals. And the only way they're going to figure that out is by asking them questions and providing them with information. So there's no two that have been alike, and I've done a large number, and only growing, which I think is wonderful. There's experts say there's over 1 million embryos in storage in the United States, and that number is growing. So this is going to become an increasing option for people.
I just read that statistic. I thought it was close, but it is 1 million. Oh my goodness.
And it's growing, and why it's a great option. Embryo donation for purposes of reproduction is a great option.
So I just have one quick question, and I hope that you don't mind again. I feel like I'm peppering you with questions. Why do we say donation and not adoption of embryos?
So the American Society for Reproductive Medicine is very clear that embryo donation is the correct term. The process of donating your embryos is regulated by the FDA, at least in the United States, and it is regulated as a donation of reproductive tissue. So it's a medical process, and that's why we use the term embryo donation. For anyone who's interested, there's like a very lengthy opinion written by the ASRM on the topic. Adoption is it's not the preferable term for a number of reasons. Primarily, adoption is a creature of state law, right? It is a legal process established in each state by the laws in that state. So elevating the status of an embryo to the status of a person who can legally be adopted is problematic for a number of reasons, particularly in personhood states.
Right.
So we want to make sure we're using the term embryo donation so as not to trigger undesired consequences.
Thank you for explaining that. I know that I have to check myself and make sure I used embryo donation as the proper language around this gifting, of this amazing, option that is available. So thank you so much for this conversation and sharing. And I just want to say I am so grateful to Resolve New England. I don't think I could have made it through my journey without them. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Resolve New England.